So here we are for the start of qualifying here at round 4, I believe, of the Porsche 911 RSR League at Speed Devils. This week we are round Nurburgring. As we see drivers going out onto their flying laps. Corrado currently your provisional pole with a 2:02.7. We'll have to see how the rest of the grid will form up for the race. As we see Corrado coming nicely through the chicane. As he comes on down through the right-hander of the final turn, we'll see whether he is able to improve, which he does with a 1:55.0. Corrado coming in behind with a 1:55.5. Looks like they're all staying in roughly the same order. Corrado going back to the pits as we come on with Eduardo, as we watch on board for his lap, nice and smoothly through turn 1. He comes through the long left-hander on this infield section. Getting a little bit out of shake, running slightly deep there into the tight left-hander to the right corner. Deciding to abandon this lap as it looks like Roberto has managed to take pole with a 1:45.7. However, is caught in a bit of traffic. And he loses the back end out of that tight corner. Fortunately, that meant he has had to throw away that lap. So he will have to come back out again later for another shot. So Lorenzo comes across the line, sitting in P3 with a 1:55.1. As it looks like Danny has had a big off there, straight into the wall. That's unfortunate for him. That has ruined his qualifying lap. He's currently sitting P8 with a 1:57 flat. If we come back with Lorenzo, who's just now coming out on his out lap, I believe. He may be on a fast one, however, as we hop on board. Nice and clean through there, using all the track as possible. Getting nicely hooked up on the curb for the run down into the hairpin. Nice and clean through there, hard on the power as he comes on out up into the Schumacher S's, I believe they're called. Nice and clean through there, nice and quick. To the left and right hander. Lorenzo opting to use the soft tyre compound rather than the super soft, as it runs slightly wide. May have lost a couple of tenths there. He may not be able to improve on this lap due to that slight mistake, but we'll have to see as it comes through the tight chicane. The chicane of the GT layout rather than the GP layout. Slightly less of a tight chicane for that one. As he comes through the final corner, we will have to see whether he's able to improve. Which he is. He goes faster with a 1:54.9. That puts him up into P2. Roberto on his out lap, now coming across the line. We'll have to see whether he is able to improve. A bit of a lock up there through turn 1. Comes on down to the left-hander. Give it nice and clean, using all the exit, making sure he can get as wide of an entry to the left-right section of turns 4 and 5. She gets through cleanly using all the exit. A little bit of a dip of the wheels, running very close to that white line on the edge of the track. It's nice and clean through that long right hander as he makes his run down into the hairpin. Does make a slight lock up, may run slightly deep there, however may have the run down into the Michael Schumacher S's. Using all the exit curb, using a lot of curb on that first left-hander and a lot on the right-hander as he comes down into turn 11. Nicely on the brakes, gets the curb perfectly. And that's a spin out, unfortunately. They're running too wide on the slippery grass. Made a bit of contact with the wall as well. As it looks like Fabio Diana has gone even faster and is sitting P1 now with a 1:54.4. However, is stuck in a bit of traffic. Is on his outlap, however, according to our telemetry. So he will hopefully be able to get out of traffic before his flying lap. As Antonio Terminiello is coming out on his outlap, getting it nice and clean. Make sure he doesn't make any mistakes. Try and not wear down the tyres too much. Daniele also on his outlap. We come on back to some of the top 3 drivers all on their outlap currently. Roberto still choosing to stick with the soft tyre compound, as we come with Lorenzo coming through turns 4 and 5. Gets a nice run out. As we come on board, you can really see the car jump about on this bumpy course. Very easy to spin out. As it comes down through the hairpin, you can really get a visual for the speed as they come down into the heavy braking zone for the hairpin. Gets it nice and hooked up for the inside apex. As he comes up to the Schumacher S's, using all the entrance curb on the left, or the curb on through the S's. Comes down through turn 11, nicely hooked up. Using all the exit. Nice and clean through there. However, does run wide, unfortunately. Goes ploughing into the wall. That's the end of his qualifying lap. So we come to Roberto at the start of his lap. See a lot of steering angle to get through that very tight turn 1. You're definitely going to see a lot of diving moves in there, especially on that first lap. Very easy to get caught up in a collision. So we will have to wait and see how our drivers will get through. He comes through turns 4 and 5 nice and clean, using all the exit again. Eduardo on his outlap, currently sitting P5 with a 1:55 flat. Lorenzo just up in front with a 1:54.9. Very close between these two drivers. Fabio still your provisional pole with a 1:54.4. Roberto coming into the Schumacher S's. Getting it nice and clean through there. Hopefully he'll be able to keep a hold of the rest of this lap and hopefully gain roughly 3 tenths to out-qualify Fabio to gain pole position. Comes on down into the chicane. Hard on the brakes as he flicks it left and flicks it right. Using all the exit curve, still sticking on that exit curve to make sure he gets a good run through the final corner. We'll have to see whether he's able to improve. Which he's not, so he still stays in P2. Eduardo coming on to his flying lap. So it looks like someone was stopped on the straight. I'm unsure who that was. Comes down into turn 1, hard on the brakes. Big lock-up moment through turn 1. It's going to cause him to run very deep. That may ruin his chances for the rest of the lap. We will have to wait and see. And yes, he decides to peel off and head back to the pits. Nicola Mira, lock up through turn 1 again, is stuck in a bit of traffic. So we will have to see whether that has an improvement, a problem with his flying lap. Being nice and clean, using all the track. So we hop on board with Nicola Mura as he heads down to the tight hairpin. Getting nice and clean. Getting smoothly on the power to prevent the rear end from kicking out. Nice and clean through there, through the Schumacher S's. As he comes to this long left-hander, this left-right. Very easy to run wide, as we have seen. Gets it nicely hooked up to the exit. As it looks like Fabio is on a fast lap as he comes through the final corner. We will have to see whether he's able to improve. Which he is. He goes faster with a 1:54.3. Nicola Mira unable to go any faster. Corrado just sitting 0.084 seconds separating him and second. Comes on through the old hairpin, the long hairpin. Nice and clean through there, getting hooked up nicely to that apex, using all the exit curve. Nice and clean through there. Heads through turn 11. The exit possible. Nicely through there. Very fast down this back straight just before the hairpin, reaching up to speeds of over 240 kilometers an hour before they dive onto the brakes for the chicane. Hopping slightly over that first part of the chicane as he comes through the final corner. Will he be able to improve? Comes on down over the line, which he does. He's only just 1/100th of a second separating him and Roberto in P2. Very close qualifying between those two. We come on with Waldemiro, your previous race victory up in the Scottish Highlands. So we'll have to see whether he can qualify any higher and whether he can make it a double race victory here at Germany. Lovely forward shot of the car, essentially from the top of the windscreen. Nicely through there. Dropping it down a couple of gears into the left and right hander of turns 11 and 12. Comes hard on the power down this long straight, making sure you don't use too much curb on the inside as it can force you out wide. Braking just after the 100-meter board, so using all the exit curb. Quite sideways through that final corner. We will have to see whether that has a big impact on his lap. Slightly dip of the wheels on the grass. He is able to improve as he heads up into P5. Very sideways, very skirtish under the brakes, very sideways through turn 1, and he's sideways on the exit into the wall. That is unfortunate. He will not be able to carry on the rest of that lap. Roberto through the chicane. We'll have to wait and see whether he is able to improve. With only 1 minute 50 on the clock, he will have to pull out something. If he can't do it this lap, it will have to be next lap. Very sideways out of the final corner. He may have just ruined that lap as well as the next lap. He's not able to improve this time, so he will have to do it next lap. If not, he will have to settle for P2. Fabio coming through the Schumacher S's. Nice and cleanly through there. Nicely on the brakes. Will he be able to improve his gap from Roberto? We will have to wait and see. You can see the suspension going very hard at work. Nice and smooth through the right hander as he jumps on the brakes for the chicane. Opting for third gear through there. Up into fourth. Down in second for the right hander. Short shifting into third to prevent the rear end from sliding. Does run wide, which means he won't be able to improve. And it looks like Roberto is also pitted, so he won't be able to improve. Corrado not being able to finish the rest of his lap, so he decides to pull off. So we have Lorenzo. And it looks like Corrado was able to improve actually as he heads into P4. Lorenzo in P5. We'll have to see whether he's able to improve. Obviously through the Schumacher S's. It looks like the checkered flag has come out, so all the drivers should be able to finish their final lap, as it looks like Lorenzo did run slightly wide. That may have ruined his chances of improving. Nicely through there. It looks like a driver opting for the pits. I believe that may have been Nick Lamura. Very sideways through there, opting for second gear, trying to get the best run he can out of the corner. Will he be able to improve? No, he still sits in P5. That's the end of his qualifying lap. Is Michel Vandone. Comes through the final corner, just 3/10 separating him and Alessio, slightly sideways out of the corner, out of the final turn. Is he able to improve? He does, but it's not enough. Daniele is currently sitting in P15. Comes through the chicane, very bouncy, using a lot of curve through there, slightly twitchy on the exit. As he rounds the final corner, will he be able to improve? No, he cannot. And neither can Stefano. So your qualifying results are Fabio, Roberto making up the first two grid positions, Corrado and Eduardo on the second row of the grid, Lorenzo, Waldemiro, Alessio Michele making up your next four drivers, Nicola Mura and Ivan making up row 5, Antonio and Umberto making up row 6, Emmanuel and Tony row 7, Daniele and Marco row 8, Stefano and Alessio row 9, and Marco in row 10th. So we will join you in a little bit for the start of the race. And we are back with only 30 seconds left on the clock as the 30 board comes down, letting the drivers know that there are only 30 seconds left in the rest before the lights come on, sorry. You see all the drivers lined up nicely as the lights are about to come on as we get ready for round 4 at the Nurburgring. As the lights go out, it looks like all drivers are away cleanly. A lot of shuffling between the order as they head on down into turn 1. So we come on up. Looks like all the drivers getting through nice and cleanly. And there's a bit of contact there between Tony and Ivan. Ivan's spinning out, unfortunately. However, the rest of the drivers looking like they got through nice and clean as we head on back up to Fabio, who is leading the race. So it looks like there's a big scramble of the order as they all come down through the Mercedes arena. Lots of drivers going too wide through there. Shell up into P7. So it looks like Lorenzo is side by side with someone. Unsure who that was. All the drivers now going single file through this section. Stefano, and that's a big contact there. It's Umberto making contact with the rear of Stefano. Looks like he has sustained some damage, which may have put him down into 18, and that's a retirement from Umberto after that collision. As Tony Pastilli up into P11 now, as they are all filing through the Schumacher S's nice and cleanly through there. Sandro looking for a move past. So it looks like Daniele is up into P13 just behind them, not being close enough to make a move as of yet. So we come on up to Waldemira, who has closed up to 0.3 seconds to Alessio. I have to see whether he is able to make a move as they come on down to the chicane. Nice and clean through there. All drivers getting through nicely. Waldemira running slightly wide. As we hop up to the battle between Corrado and Eduardo, as they are very close, just 0.2 seconds separating them. He may go for a dive up the inside. He is not close enough to do so and decides to sit on back and may come under threat from Lorenzo just behind him, 0.6 seconds separating them. So it looks like Danny Piscella, Alessandro and Emmanuel were 3 wide coming into the first turn, and Alessandro is off there. That's unfortunate for him. Very easy to get very sideways on the power. As Ivan is down into P13. So we come back up to Corrado, right on to the tail of Eduardo. Just 0.1 seconds, look for a move up the inside, not being close enough to make anything done as of yet. Will he look for a move? Little bit of contact there. However, both drivers coming off fairly unscathed. Corrado losing a bit of time. That has allowed Lorenzo to catch up very dramatically. 0.1 seconds separating them now. Lorenzo on the medium tyre, Corrado on the soft tyre compound. So Corrado will have more grip and manages to hold off just in front as he hunts down Eduardo. Both from these 3 drivers battling, that has enabled Fabio to gain a 2.7 second lead. Corrado driving nicely. So it looks like Marco has been sent slightly down the order there. Unfortunately for him. We come on down with these 3 drivers. Corrado running slightly wide, Lorenzo as well running slightly wide. That will mean that he won't be close enough to make a move into the chicane. So we're coming down through the battle between P10, 11 and 12th, all battling for 10th position. So it looks like Emmanuel may have caught up slightly, won't be close enough to make a move into the chicane. As it looks like, I believe that was Roberto, ran slightly wide there, being forced onto the grass and has dropped down a couple of positions. Luckily managed to keep it out of the wall. Corrado 0.2 seconds separating them as they come down into turn 1, not being close enough to make anything done. May look for the run out. As I believe that was Alessandro and Stefano going sideways going side by side. Alessandro, big lock up into turn 1. That will not be very good for the tyres. And Stefano spins out at turn 1. Fortunate for him, losing a lot of time, allowing Marco Navarino to catch up as we come on back to the battle between Corrado and Eduardo. Corrado not being close enough to make a move as of yet. Still 0.2 seconds separating them as we come on down to the battle between Ivan and Roberto. Ivan looking like he ran slightly wide into there. Big lock up from Daniele up in front. 0.2 seconds separating all three of these drivers. Very close racing here between them, as it looks like Corrado has also jumped up to just 0.2 seconds through the Schumacher S's. Still not being close enough to make a move. Fabio is still gaining quite a lead on that soft compound. 5 seconds separating them now. As they come on down through turns 11 and 12. Corrado not being close enough to make anything done. Sits comfortably behind. Get an onboard shot as they come on down into the chicane. He closed them very quickly under the braking zone. Fortunately not getting as good of a run. However, has closed the gap a lot into the final corner. However, Eduardo getting the better run with the later apex. As they come on to the 4th lap, Fabio is your leader with Eduardo, Corrado and Lorenzo, as well as Alessio, all making up the top 5 as big lockups from all 3 drivers into turn 1. Lorenzo was looking for a move up the inside, however did not get the run. Lorenzo just 0.3 seconds, Corrado running slightly wide, has allowed Lorenzo to catch up slightly, not being close enough. As Antonio is side by side with Nicola Mura. Nicola Mura will have the inside and takes his place back. Antonio will have to look for a move somewhere else as we come back up to the battle but for 2nd place between Lorenzo, Eduardo and Corrado. Eduardo leading this battle, looking to keep both drivers behind, as Corrado is just 0.1 seconds behind now. Looks for a move around the outside. It's a long way round there as it looks like Lorenzo is capitalising up the inside. Corrado not giving him a lot of space. Corrado now on the outside through the Schumacher S is not really where you want to be. As he comes through the Schumacher S is nice and clean. Corrado right on their tail. As he looks for a move up the inside, will he be? And he gets it done at turn 11, nice and clean. As it looks like Lorenzo looks for a move up at turn 12. And he manages to get it done at 2 places, unfortunately. Eduardo dropping there in just 2 turns as Corrado has managed to gain a bit of a lead. Eduardo coming under threat from Alessio now as Eduardo jumps up the inside and manages to make the move stick. What a brilliant move there by Eduardo. Lorenzo running slightly wide. That is very... gets a tap up the rear. Forced him to run wide. Not sure who that was, but it's very close between these top drivers. Just a few seconds separating from P2 right down to about P6. So we come to Nicola Mura, who's right on the rear of Eduardo and Antonio right up the inside of the both. Nicola Mura unfortunately getting squeezed in the middle as Eduardo goes for a spin. Antonio picking up 2 places there through turn 1. Very good for him. As we are just 5 laps into this 35 lap race. As we head up to Lorenzo, closing in nicely on, I believe that is Alessio up in front. Looking for a move up the inside, not being close enough. Alessio running slightly deep, but does allow Lorenzo to get the cutback as he's up into P3, while Demiro behind him looking for a move. Tony Pistali up into P11 now. So it looks like Emmanuel went for a spin, which he has as he's dropped down quite a few positions now. I think he may have sustained some damage as well as we come back to the battle for P3. The battle between Lorenzo, Alessio and Waldemiro now, as Corrado has gained quite a big lead to these drivers as they go 2 wide through the Schumacher S, as Alessio managing to get it done up the inside. Great drive by him. As Waldemiro looking for a move, not managing to get it done into turn 10. as they come on down to the long straight before the chicane. Lorenzo closing up nicely, just 0.2 seconds separating them now. Not being close enough to make a move up into the chicane, as Fabio now comes on to his fifth, as he just finished his fifth lap, sorry. Very close between these top drivers, all battling for that third position, looking for as many championship points as they can, sorry. Daniele in 13th, unfortunately making a mistake through the chicane, which has cost him quite a lot of time. He was closing up to Stefano, as we come to Lorenzo in P4. Bit of a gap gaining to Waldemiro now, who is also on the medium tyre. All three drivers on the medium compound. So it looks like Lorenzo does manage to get better drive and sticks his car up the inside, but not being close enough. He will have the outside through the left-hander. No, he decides to, he fakes left and goes right, not being close enough. Tries the cut back again as he done last lap, not being close enough. Alessio, driving a very good defensive race, prevents Lorenzo going up the inside as they chase down into the hairpin. 0.1 seconds, Lorenzo going to the outside. Alessio driving very well and very defensive to prevent Lorenzo coming past. Just 0.2 seconds separating them still as they come through the Schumacher. As his slight tap of the grass there by Corrado up in front, I believe. As he looks for a move around the outside, not being close enough to get anything done. Nicely through there. Still 0.2 seconds separating them. Lorenzo having quite a good championship so far, with some quite high finishes. Will he be able to make it a possible podium this week? We will have to wait and see. As they come on down through the chicane. Still 0.2 seconds separating them. That's a big spin there by Lorenzo, unfortunately through the final turn, and it actually looks like there was a bit of contact there with Alessio, as all these drivers have now clumped together down the straight. That's a couple of drivers, I believe that is Nicola Mura and Alessio going side by side, as well as Lorenzo and Roberto going side by side down into turn 1. Also slightly later on the brakes, managing to get it past up the inside of Alessio. Nicola Mura managing to get past as well. Lorenzo still sticking on the outside. He will be on the outside for the next left-hander. Will be on the inside for the right-hander. Managing to get past just before that brings him up into 6th position. Roberto going to look for a move as well. We see Lorenzo is just behind Nicola Mura now, putting a lot of pressure on him. Antonio putting a lot of pressure on Waldemiro, as well as all these drivers are separated by just a couple of seconds. We're still watching Waldemiro 0.2 seconds behind. So we come with a rear camera of Nicola Mura. You can see Lorenzo looking for a move around the outside, not being able to get anything done. You can see very close behind him there, as that looks like Roberto running wide through the hairpin. Unfortunately losing a lot of time to this battle up front. Lovely shot through the Schumacher S's. You see Lorenzo has closed up quite a bit of a gap now. Just 0.2 seconds separating them as they come through turns 10 and 11. Very close battling so far for this race. So we see they come on down through the hairpin. Through the chicane even. 0.2 seconds separating them still. Let's come on board with Fabio through turn 1, keeping it nice and clean. Very sideways moment there for him. That will allow Corrado to gain quite a bit of time on him. However, it looks like Corrado may have had an issue as he's dropped off quite a bit. So we come on back with Fabio to come back on board. Driving nice and clean, driving his own race on the soft compound. So we come back to the battle between Lorenzo and Nicola Mura. Lorenzo on the outside, not being able to make anything done. Does drop off slightly, unfortunately, from being on the longer route around the outside, closing in a lot through that left right-hander. Runs very wide, but managing to keep it in a straight line. 0.3 seconds separating them now. So come on down through this left right of turn 6 and 7. So come on down through the hairpin. Nice and clean. 0.3 seconds separating them now, as that's a big lock up through by Lorenzo, managing to prevent it from running wide. So it comes up to Nicola Mira. Not being able to make a lot of entry curb there by Lorenzo. Needs to make sure he isn't using too much of the curb, where he may get inquiries from the stewards. We come with Fabio round in the final corner to finish his 7th lap. Keep it nice and clean, coming back to the battle between Nicola Mira. Looks like Lorenzo did run slightly wide as he's dropped off now. Nicola Mira catching up to the rear of Antonio as they come on down. He jumps up the inside, up into the chicane. Hard on the brakes, they are both still side by side through the chicane. Antonio managing to edge up a bit of a gap to keep up in front. However, Nicola Mira is now coming under threat from Lorenzo, locking up slightly as they come on through. Lorenzo being stuck on the outside. Alessio looking for a little move, not being close enough to make anything done. Lorenzo right up the inside. Nicola Mira going defensive. Lorenzo and Nicola Mira now side by side as they come on down through turn 1. Nicola Mira will have the inside, is on the brakes slightly earlier, however. Lorenzo, big lock up. Nicola Mira deciding to stick behind. Wise idea, very easy to get in a collision through that turn 1, as Lorenzo is now back up into P5 and is chasing down Antonio up in P4. Very close battling between these 5 drivers. Bit of a gap now separating them all, just minimum of 0.4 seconds separating Nicola Mira and Alessio, and 0.3 separating Alessio and Roberto as they come on down through the left right handers. Keeping it nice and clean. Roberto now catching up a lot, decides to opt for the outside line. See there, side by side, Roberto slightly edging out, however will have the outside. Will he be able to get the run out of the corner? Little bit of contact there causes Roberto to go off into the gravel, which has created a loss of traction, causing Roberto to spin out. He may be able to get it down onto the track before he loses another place to Alessandro. Unfortunate for him there. We come on back to the battle between Lorenzo and Antonio. Lorenzo catching up to 0.3 seconds now, separating them both. Antonio flashing his headlights. So Lorenzo is now just 0.1 seconds behind. Will he go for a move into the chicane? Fakes right, goes left. Not being close enough to make anything done. Starts to slot in behind as they come through the chicane into the final corner. So they come on to their 10th lap of 35. Down under the BMW. Big billboard above the finishing line. 0.2 seconds separating them now. Will he look for a dive up the inside? No, he's not close enough to make anything done. Does look to the outside as Antonio goes to the inside. Lorenzo slightly sideways, does enable him to get quite a good run though. Is stuck on the outside of Antonio. Antonio managing to edge out a gap, however Lorenzo instantly closes it with the run out. They are still side by side through that left-hander as they come on down through the right-hander of turn 5. Lorenzo will have the inside. Bit of contact there between Lorenzo and Antonio. It allows Nicola Mira to get past, as well as Nicola Mira looks for a move up the inside. Maybe, no, he's not close enough. Does make contact between him and Lorenzo. Lorenzo managing to hold it. Antonio doing a great job of avoiding them both. We'll have to wait and see whether Nicola Mira allows the place back, as that was his mistake, which he does. Great sportsmanlike conduct there by Nicola Mira, allowing Lorenzo to get past. However, Antonio is now back up in front as Lorenzo does lock up into the hairpin. Running nicely on the exit, however, gaining a bit of a gap to Nicola Mira. So we're coming down to Roberto, who's caught up to the back of Alessio, just 0.4 seconds separating them now as they come into the Schumacher S's. Nicely through there for the both of them. As we come on to a battle further down the order between Marco and Tony. Nicely through there. Marco just behind in that lovely red, a very dark red on that car. And that is all that Tony is seeing in his rear view mirror currently, as Marco is on the soft tyre compound, whereas Tony is on the mediums. They're coming down through the long straight into the chicane. Still not being close enough, fortunately, to gain up a place into P12. So come on back to Lorenzo, who has been having quite an eventful race. However, he's slowly gaining up the positions as he's in P4 currently. Does gain a lot in that section. He seems to be very good through that left and right hander of turns 4 and 5, as he gets a remarkable run on Antonio, dives into the inside. He will have the inside for this left hander, which is pretty crucial. Managing to avoid contact. They are still side by side for the right hander, as they are still side by side through their remarkable driving by the both of these. Antonio will have the inside for the hairpin. Lorenzo is managing to gain a bit of a gap, however will need to allow the space for Antonio. Antonio not being close enough to make a move, may look for a move on the exit, but not being close enough. So that means Lorenzo is up into P4 now, as he looks to chase down Waldemiro in P3, your last race winner up in Scotland, as he is chasing down Corrado in P2, who's currently 10 seconds off of Fabio as he comes on to the 11th lap. As we hop on board, very unique sound of this Porsche, jumping down into first gear for that turn 1, short shifting into first to prevent it from spinning, as Roberto is just 0.1 seconds behind Alessio. Alessio did go slightly defensive into the chicane, however Roberto deciding to back out as he runs wide out of the chicane as they come through the final corner. Is he able to make the run, which he is, as they come on down to the pit straight. 0.3 seconds separating them. He's not close enough to make a move. He does have a little look, but he realises he's not close enough. He's right on the rear diffuser of that Porsche, of that black Porsche of Alessio. There's now 0.5 seconds separating them now as we come back for the rest of the onboard lap of Fabio through the Schumacher S. Is nice and clean through there, up into 5th as he comes hard onto the brakes, down into 3rd gear, down into even 2nd, down 2nd quickly for that right hander, but it's quickly short shifting into 3rd to prevent the rear wheels from spinning. Nice and clean through there as he comes down to the chicane. Nicely through there, using plenty of curb, making sure the car is planted before he puts the power down. Nicely through the final corner as we come back to the battle between Nicola and Mira, as that has closed up quite a bit now. 0.3 seconds separating them now, however. It was down to about 0.1 seconds for a little bit there, as he's got a nice run out of there. 0.1 seconds now as he gets the slipstream down the straight. Will he be able to make it done as they're side by side down the straight? As he comes and jumps on the brakes, he's up the inside, gets it done nicely into P5. As Antonio may look for a move back, Daniele into P10 now as he's closed the gap to Alessandro. Nicely through there. They're hard on the brakes through the final corner. Alessio's locking up slightly with that right front tyre. It's nicely out there, 0.3 seconds separating them now. Daniele's staying in the slipstream of Alessandro. Alessandro staying very close to the inside wall there. Daniele still sticking around the outside, deciding to opt slightly deep to maybe get the run out, slightly sideways out there. That may ruin his run into the left-hander, so slot in behind. Daniele is nicely behind Alessandro. Alessandro going quite shallow into there. Daniele going very deep around the outside, not being able to make a move as of yet. They come on down through the left-hander. Nicely through there, 0.3 seconds still separating them. They come through the right-hander. Still 0.4 seconds separating them as Marco Novarino comes into the pits in P15. Sorry, he's now coming out of the pits. It's Marco Canovesi. Haven't seen much of him this race, unfortunately, being down in P14. As Fabio starts his 13th lap. Sorry, his 14th lap, as Roberto has closed up the gap in between him and Alessio. 0.2 seconds separating them now as they come on down the straight. Roberto in the slipstream. Will he be able to make a move into the chicane? No, he's not close enough this time. He may look for the run out of the final corner, however. No, he's not close enough. Runs slightly wide, 0.3 seconds separating them now as we come to the battle between P9 and P10. Daniele closing up the gap very much through the final corner, however losing it all due to the run out. Daniele is sticking in the slipstream of Alessandro, however Alessandro opting to run very close to the wall again and run defensive. Daniele saying big lock up. However, will he be able to make the move stick as he ran very wide? As they come side by side into the left-hander, nicely through there. Very good move there by Daniele, unfortunately locking up, which may cause damage to his tyres. However, he is passed now into P9. As we come to the battle between P8 and P7, 0.4 seconds separating Roberto and Alessio. Now, as Alessio has caught up very much to Antonio. Just 0.2 seconds separating those two now as they come through the chicane. Slight lock up by Alessio. 0.3 seconds separating them now as Antonio does run slightly wide. That allows Alessio to get past. Roberto going to look for a move as well, as he's got an exceptional run out of there. 0.1 seconds, he opts to the outside. No, he fakes the outside and goes to the inside. Not being close enough. Antonio running wide. Roberto giving him plenty of space on the inside, however does get past and manages to get up in front. As that then means Antonio is just behind them now. As Waldemiro is into P3. Driving his own race, just 3 seconds separating him and Corrado now, as he's been lapping 2 seconds faster than Corrado. Clearly his soft tyres are starting to wear off, as that is a big gain by Waldemiro. As Fabio is also lapping a 1:57, so maybe Corrado made a mistake. He's dropped off quite a lot from Fabio as well. We come on down to Antonio, lock up through turn 1. At very sideways moment, managing to catch it. Excellent driving by Antonio there. Fabio driving his own race still up in P1. So looks like Corrado, is still quite a way behind. However, Waldemiro is catching up very quickly. It's just 4 seconds separating them now as Tony comes into the pit lane. We will have to see whether he decides to go for another medium or decides to go for the soft tyres as we come on board with Fabio. Nicely through the chicane as he comes out through the final corner onto the final straight. as he comes onto his 16th lap as we come to the battle between Daniele and Alessandro, as it looks like Alessandro managed to get past through the chicane. As you can see just how close Daniele and Alessandro are down into here. Daniele opting for the outside through this left-hander, managing to get it done. We come on down to Marco, as the two Marcos battling out. Marco Novarino managing to get past is on the soft compound, so Marco having to give up that place to the other Marco. Alessandro still in P10, 0.3 seconds separating them still as they come through the final corner, not being able to make anything done. So there's 0.6 seconds separating them now, as we're not close to halfway through the race. Your race standings are currently Fabio leading the race with Corrado and Waldemiro behind him. Lorenzo and Nicola Mura closely following them, with Alessio, Roberto, Antonio, Daniele and Alessandro making up your top 10. However, anything can change in this race, so we'll have to wait until the end to see whether anything major happens, as Alessandro is still 0.6 seconds behind, very close between these two. Big lock-up moment for Alessandro. So we have a look at the tyre options. Currently Fabio and Corrado opting for the soft tyres, whereas your next four drivers are opting for the mediums, with Roberto Antonio opting for the softs as well, and Daniele and Alessandro making up your mediums in your top 10. So a big wide variety of different tyres in the top order, as it looks like Waldemiro has caught up very drastically to Corrado. Corrado losing quite a bit of time to Waldemiro, as that's a big lock up by Corrado into turn 1. Just 1.3 seconds slow slide by Waldemiro, as he is pushing very hard, as it looks like Nicola Mura and Roberto jump into the pits. Waldemiro driving his race, looking to catch up to Corrado. As you see, nicely feathering the car through the corners, not having to fight it at all. So we see nicely through there as they come on down into the hairpin. I believe that is Tony up in front, so we'll have to see where Corrado catches up to him and whether that will make a difference between their battle. As it looks like Waldemiro is now just 0.6 between them, 0.5 seconds as they are closing up. Waldemiro just behind them now. 0.4 seconds now. As you see from the rear view of Corrado, you can see just how closely Waldemiro is catching up. 0.2 seconds now. See the slipstream making a big difference, and he's dropped off slightly through the chicane, as it looks like both drivers decide to jump into the pits. So we will have to see how both these drivers fare in their pit stop, see what their pit crew can do for them, and try and get out up in front of each other. So we come to Fabio driving his own race still, hasn't pitted as of yet. However, he may pit soon, as his softs may start getting off. However, he is still lapping in the 157s, which is a good lap time for fairly old soft tyres. As Fabio sitting comfortably comes down to the hairpin. I'll let you enjoy the engine sounds of this Porsche 911 RSR round the Nurburgring. Lovely sounding car this, as it looks like Waldemiro and Corrado have ended up in a similar order. However, Waldemiro has dropped off slightly from Corrado, as it looks like Daniele is just behind them as well. However, he has not pitted as of yet, I believe. Corrado now managing to gain quite a gap to Waldemiro, 1.3 seconds now, as Daniele did lock up slightly through the hairpin. As it looks like Fabio is into the pits, we'll have to see where he ends up, as Lorenzo was about 25 seconds behind when he came into the pits. I do not believe Lorenzo has pitted as of yet. No, he has not, as he's jumped into the pits. So we'll have to see where he comes out in relation to Corrado, who just pitted on the last lap. Here's Alessio in P3, opting not to pit, so he will take the lead of the race. However, he will still need to pit, as that looks like Fabio is in front and has managed to stay out in front of Alessio. That will mean he will have quite a clear space behind him, as it looks like Lorenzo has also pitted. So Corrado taking that place back into P3 and Waldemiro. As Fabio is now out in front, about 20 seconds separating him and Corrado, who was in second before all of the pit stops. So you see Alessio in second. Roberto still driving his own race in P6. Big lock up through turn 1. So all the drivers are now spacing out slightly. So it looks like Stefano and Daniele are right with each other after Daniele's pit stop. Just 0.8 seconds separating them now. We will have to see whether he can make a move soon. Very nice helmet there on Daniele. Definitely you can tell that that is him, one of the only drivers with that helmet in the league. Lovely shot as they come through the right-hander down the straight. You can just see how much speed they can carry through that corner. Alessio still driving his own race as he jumps into the pits. We'll have to see where he ends up, as that gives Corrado and Waldemiro the place back up. So we're coming back to the battle between Daniele and Stefano. About a second separating them now. So he's driving his own race. As that is Waldemiro and Corrado up into second and third now, where they were before their pit stops. Nicely through there, keeping it nice and clean, making sure he can gain as much time as he can without damaging the tyres too much. Nicely through that right-hander, as we have about 15 laps remaining. We are over halfway now as Daniele and Stefano jump into the pits. So it looks like all the drivers have spread out. Fabio, your current leader of the race, has been leading since lap 1, and he is still leading up onto lap 20, followed by Corrado and Waldemiro, followed by Lorenzo and Roberto. Alessio just behind him, with Nicola Mira closely following Alessio, and Antonio, Alessandro and Marco making up your top 10. As that's Ivan as they come side by side into the left-hander. Ivan managing to make the move stick. As they're still side by side, managing to edge out in front. He will have the inside to this next right-hander. However, Marco may have the run, which he does, so they are side by side down into turn 6. Marco managing to get out in front. So it's nicely passed now. Ivan now sticking just behind, hoping not to get away, not letting Marco get too far in front. He sticks to the outside, nearly running wide there. Sticking to the back of Marco. As you see from the rear of Marco. Gaining a bit of a gap now to Ivan. Bit of a lock up there. You can see all the tyre marks from where the drivers have spun and locked up. Nicely dabbing the curb on the inside. As we come with Corrado for an onboard lap. Very intricate interior this with the carbon wheel, with all the telemetry built into the wheel, very similar to a sort of F1 style. With also the virtual rear view mirror, enabling the driver to see what's behind him. As you see, Lorenzo in P4 has been having quite an eventful race, however he has found a bit of a gap now and is now 9 seconds behind Waldemiro. As we come on back down to Ivan and Marco, we've closed the gap to about 0.3 seconds. As they come on down into this turn 6, this long left hand, they're very hard, very easy to get it wrong, sorry, with this harsh bump on the inside. As they come on down, keeping it nice and clean. Fabio still leading the race quite nicely, with quite a comfortable lead to the rest of the drivers. As we come on back to Ivan, 0.3 seconds separating them now as he comes on down in. Slotting in behind, 0.2 seconds separating them now, and he's up the inside, and that's contact between the both of them. That's Ivan gone spinning out. It's unfortunate for Ivan, gaining a bit of front damage there. That is a lot of lost time to Marco. Marco managing to get away very luckily, with minimal damage it looks like as well. Meaning he's off in front now into P10 quite comfortably. There's all the drivers separating out now. Stefano, the gap between Stefano and Emmanuel is probably smallest on the current timing. 2.5 seconds separating them now as he comes through this chicane. Nice and clean through the final corner. Nicely onto the final straight. Come on back to Fabio. As we see, we get a close-up on the driver's side of the front dash as we join him for a lap. I will try and keep us quiet to enable you to hear this beast of an engine on the rear end of the car. Getting it nicely through there. Nice and clean through there. Very good sounding car this. Keeping it nice and clean. Did lap a 1:55 last lap. That's a very fast lap on the soft tyres. We'll have to see whether he can make a double soft stint. He may have to go for a triple soft setup, as it looks like Daniele is in P16 now, as he has come into the pits. He's 2.2 seconds down, so he may have had a collision with a wall or something, but that may mean he is retired from the rest of the race. We're coming back with Fabio, taking it nice and easy, nicely hooking up with those apexes. Very nice sounding car this, as he comes on down into the chicane. As that is a lap of the Nurburgring in the Porsche 911 RSR, as driven by your current race leader Fabio. As we have a look at some of the battles between the other drivers. So it looks like currently the closest two drivers between each other is Nicola Mira, 2 seconds between him and Alessio. Quite a big gap now as the drivers are spacing out. Nice of a gap now for Alessio, giving him plenty of breathing space. Comes nicely through the final corner. Bringing it nicely down the pit straight. So it looks like Fabio has run wide through the chicane. That's a big mistake, and now allowing a back marker, Tony, to come back past. We'll see whether Tony gives the place back when Fabio does catch up quite a lot, which he has done very quickly through the Schumacher S's. Tony getting cleanly out of the way. Good move by Tony to keep out of the way. So that was quite an unfortunate mistake by Fabio, as that's Corrado just behind, losing a bit of time. However, he will gain time on this lap due to Fabio making a mistake. Oldemiro behind Corrado as well, also losing a bit of time, so he won't be able to gain much, as there is only 10 more laps left of the race. Lovely sounding car as they come down the straight. The driver's very separated out now. Roberto driving his own race as he comes on down through the long straight into the chicane. Nicely into the chicane he comes. Nicely by Roberto as he comes through turn 1. Unfortunately, not much going on in this race currently, as the drivers are very spaced out. All drivers racing their own race. As currently still the closest gap is Nicola Mira to Alessio. Not been able to make anything done as of yet. 10 laps left of this race. Hopefully we will get some closing up to make the race more interesting in the final laps. However, at the current moment it does not look like it, as we have Alessio in the black Porsche driving nicely. Still 10 seconds separating him and Roberto. Fabio still in the race comfortably. He's led the race for the entire thing from the lights going out, and he's still sitting up in front. Will he be able to make it a clean race? Nicely down into turn 1, being mistake free. Racing clean through there. Your current driver standings for this championship at the minute is your leader Corrado is currently leading the championship, who is in second currently, racing for the Texas racing team. Is racing for the first team of the Texas Racing, followed up by Waldemiro in P3 racing with GTWR, who's sitting second in the championship. Alessio Costantino in P3 currently in the championship, racing with OV3 Racing. Roberto Accusero in P4 in the championship, also racing with the GTWR, however racing for the third team in the championship. He's sitting P4 in the championship. Fabio Diani, who is your race leader currently, is sitting P5, racing for the GTWR team. Lorenzo, also racing for the GTWR team, who's currently sitting in the racing P4, is 6th in the championship. Nicola Mira for Wolf Racing team is sitting P7 with his teammate Daniele P8 just behind him, followed by Thierry Frey, who is not here for this race, who races for the Rollover Racing team, is in P9, and Tony Pistelli in P12 currently is in P10 in the championship, racing for Chromed Out Racing. As we have a look at the race, at the team standings, as it's GTWR, the second team, currently leading, followed by the Texas Racing team in P2, with OV3 Racing wrapping up the top 3. As we see Tony driving his own race in P12. Fabio still driving his own race, 30 seconds gap between him and Corrado, so he will have plenty of breathing space in case he makes a mistake. Just about 9 laps remaining. It comes down to the hairpin. Hopefully he can keep it clean for the next 8 or 9 laps. That's very clean through there. He's a very fast driver at the minute. He was the fastest in qualifying, he's the fastest in race. Will he be able to make it a race victory? We'll have to wait and see. We come on with Corrado. Lovely shot. You can just see how much work the driver's doing. Fighting the car over the curb. That is a really nice shot of the car. You can really see how hard the drivers have to work this car. Nicola Mira in P7, still unable to close the gap. It's losing time slightly to the driver in front, which is Alessio Costantino. Just 3.6 seconds separating them now. As it still looks like they are the closest two drivers. So Waldemiro is about 4.5 seconds to Corrado. Looking to close the gap. Did lap about a second faster than Corrado that last lap. He will have to make a lot of time up rather quickly if he's able to do anything. See nicely through this Mercedes arena section. nicely through turns 4 and 5. You see Corrado, up in the distance. As we come on board with Waldemiro on his close dash cam. So nicely there, you can see Corrado up in the distance. Waldemiro keeping his eyes on him, making sure he can close as much of a gap as he can. As it looks like currently Tony is the closest driver to the driver up in front, which is Stefano Orlandi. Bit of a lock up by Tony that may cause him a bit of time to lose to Stefano. Keep it out nicely in front. As you can see, he's just up in front now, not too far behind. So nicely through the chicane, keeping it nice and clean through there. As he's very sideways on the exit there, managing to keep a hold of it somehow. It's now 2.5 seconds separating him and Stefano, as Waldemiro is on a charge to catch up to Corrado. So it looks like both of these drivers are catching up to Tony and Stefano, so we'll have to see how each pair of drivers will affect each other's races. So it looks like Tony has dropped off slightly from Stefano. Waldemiro not that far off Corrado. He was about 7/10 faster that last lap. Has a lot of time to gain. He will be needing to do that for the rest of the race if he is able to get close to Corrado. As he comes on down through the right hand, and nice and clean through there as he jumps on to the accelerator down the long straight. Nicely through that, hard on the brakes as it comes through the hairpin. A lot of skid marks there into the hairpin. You can just tell how much rubber has been left down there from people locking up. That's not very good for the tyres. People may be fighting tyre wear at this point now, as it's now 3 seconds separating them as they come through turn 11 and 12. Nice and clean through there by Waldemiro, hunting down that Texas Racing Team car up in front. Not being able to gain enough time to be right behind to make a move as of yet. However, there is still about 5 laps left in the race, as Fabio, your leader, coming through the Mercedes arena. Nicely through turns 4 and 5. Nice and clean through there, making sure he doesn't lose the rear end too much. Nice through that left hander as we hop on back with Waldemiro, 2.4 seconds separating them now. He was nearly a second faster that last lap, sorry. Bit of a lock up into turn 4, however not enough to make him run deep. He's catching up quite considerably, 3 seconds separating them now as Corrado is caught up in traffic now. We'll see how that makes an effect. Looks like he has caught up quite a bit, as it looks like, I think that is Tony. Yes, that was Tony letting Corrado past. Whether it is right on the rear end of Corrado. Corrado did have a bit of a lock up. Waldemiro on the medium tyre, 2.5 seconds behind now. The softer tyre would have worn more than the medium tyre, so we'll have to see whether Waldemiro still has the pace in the mediums. You see 2.3 seconds separating them now. Waldemiro will have to get cleanly past Tony. He will have to gain a lot of time through the chicane in order for him to easily get past when they come onto the pit straight, which is where he will want to be able to catch him to make it nice and easy and not to lose too much time. And that's Waldemiro off out of the chicane. That has closed up the gap very much as they come onto the 31st lap. Just 5 more laps remaining. Tony separating these two people from battling. Tony right up the rear end of Corrado. It actually kind of looked like Corrado was looking, Tony was looking for a move. Bit of a lock up there from Tony as we see Waldemiro catching up to the rear of Tony Pistali, wanting to get past as fast as he can. Tony sticking to the outside, and very good sportsmanlike conduct there by Tony, making sure he is out of the way to allow these two drivers to carry on their battle. 1.6 seconds separating them now. Waldemiro is chasing down Corrado up in front. It was a huge mistake by Corrado, enabling to Waldemiro to catch up, which could prove crucial in the rest of this race. You see, these two drivers are now currently the closest two drivers. However, still 1.6 seconds between them. So that's a big lock up by Tony in the background. You see 1.6 seconds separating them still. Onboard shot, you can see Waldemiro really pushing the car, making sure he can close down the gap as quick as he can. Still 1.3 seconds roughly. 1.2 separating these two. As they come nicely through the right hander, using all the curb, making sure he can gain as much time. Braking really late through there, through the chicane, getting it nice and clean through there. Actually 1 second separating them now as they come through the final corner. Waldemiro just 0.8 seconds now behind Corrado. You can clearly see how the tyres are making a really big difference. Waldemiro with a 158.2 last, Corrado with a 158.2 last lap, and Waldemiro with a 157.8. So that's 6/10 faster. He has been over 5/10 faster every lap so far as they're coming down into turn 2. As he comes down, 0.8 seconds separating them now. Still holding on. Just 0.6 seconds separating them now. 0.7, the gap slightly gaining. However, this is the main battle we are focusing on for the rest of this race. This battle for second place. This could possibly cost one of these two drivers the championship. That's a big lock up by Waldemiro, allowing a big lock up by Corrado, allowing Waldemiro to catch up. 0.4 seconds separating them now as they come on down into the Schumacher S's. That is traffic up in front. I believe that is Stefano. I'm unsure, however. We will have to see how that plays a factor in this battle, as that's a slight error by Corrado. Stefano got very slow on the outside, staying out of the way. Waldemiro just 0.2 seconds separating them now as they come on down the backstraight. Waldemiro will be in the slipstream. Will he be close enough to make a move? He looks to the outside. Corrado going defensive. No, Waldemiro deciding to stick behind. Decides to go through the chicane behind Corrado. Wise idea, preventing both of them being in a collision. As they come on into the pit straight. Quite a big gap now developing between these two. 0.3 seconds. Now, as they come on down into turn 1, just 3 more laps. Corrado got a hold off Waldemiro for 3 laps to make sure his second place stays. Waldemiro was looking to the inside, however not being able to make anything down. Corrado running slightly wide through the Mercedes arena. Pardon me. As Corrado still off up in front in P2. That's quite a big sideways moment there for Corrado. Waldemiro closing up very much. 0.1 second separating them now. No, not being close enough to make anything done. Still just seeing behind Waldemiro. Corrado doing a very good defensive race. Both drivers using all the track they possibly can. Waldemiro in the slipstream, looking for a move up the inside. Not being close enough, both drivers locking up as that's what Corrado going slightly wide. Both drivers just a couple of inches off each other as they come side by side up into the Schumacher S's. Corrado getting back out up in front, 0.1 seconds separating them still as they come up into turns 11 and 12. Waldemiro not being able to stick around the outside as they both stay as their original positions. So still 0.2 seconds separating them now. Waldemiro going to have the slipstream down the straight. As we see from the rear of Corrado, as it looks like Waldemiro is going to go for the outside, not being able to get it done. Corrado going defensive and sticking to the inside as that's off from Waldemiro. That has unfortunately put an end to his second place, as it looks like Lorenzo has caught up quite a lot, so there may be a battle between these two. Waldemiro unfortunately pushing the car a little too much and running wide out of the chicane. That has allowed Corrado a bit of breathing space, so he will be out in front. Fabio still your race leader, still out in front, 13 seconds separating them to both, meaning he is cleanly out in the lead. He's led for most of the races. He's run slightly wide, not too wide, but did lose probably a couple of tenths from running wide. Waldemiro still behind Corrado, and Lorenzo not that far behind him. 2 seconds separating both of these drivers. As you see, Lorenzo 2.5 seconds separating him and Waldemiro. He will have to be driving a crazy race if he wants to catch up. Still 2 more laps left of this race. Corrado sitting comfortably in second, as that's Marco Novarino retiring from the race, unfortunately. Just 2 more laps left in the race. That is unfortunate for him. Nicola Mura 3 seconds behind Alessio in P7, as it looks like Ivan has caught up a lot to Alessandro. 1.7 seconds now separating these two drivers. So that's hard on the brakes for Ivan. Slight lock up, however does not lose that much time as the leader comes onto the final lap. We will ride on board for the final lap. Gets nice and clean through turn 1, sticking in second gear, preventing the rear wheels from spinning. Nicely out of there, rolls nicely on the accelerator. Into second for this left-hander through the Mercedes arena. Up into third, back down into second for turns 4 and 5. Gets it nice and clean through there. Fairly safe race for Fabio so far as he comes on down through turn 6. So that's nice through there, nearly running wide. Does ride through the right hand of turn 7. So that's Fabio now coming down into the chicane. As we come back to the battle between Tony, as that looks like it is closed up a lot. He's just 0.7 seconds separating him and Stefano now as they are on their final laps. Just 0.7 seconds separating them now. Tony slightly a lock up as Stefano also locks up, runs slightly wide. Tony locking up again into that right hander. Obviously his tyres are going slightly off. He is on the medium tyre. It's 0.7 seconds separating him and Stefano now, as it looks like Corrado and Waldemiro have closed up quite a bit as well. 0.9 seconds separating them. We'll have to keep an eye on the live timing to see whether they close up a lot or not. So we see Tony closing up quite a bit of a gap, 0.3 seconds, and separating them now as they come on down through turns 11 and 12. Tony, big lock up, running very wide through there. That's ruined his chances for the rest of the race. As Fabio comes through the final corner, He runs over to the pit wall, his pit crew congratulating him on his race victory. As that's Valdemiro and Corrado side by side through the final corner. Who will get the drag out of the final corner? It is a side by side race down to the line. It looks like Corrado is out in front, and Corrado takes it. What a close race there, right at the end. Side by side by those two. Lorenzo ending up in P4, Roberto P5. As we come to the battle between Tony and Stefano. As I believe those two drivers have now finished. They finished P11 and P12. Tony unfortunately not being able to make a move on those two. Nicola Mura finishing P7. What a great race there between Corrado and Waldemiro through that final corner. That was a drag race to the line. So your final finishes are Fabio doing donuts, celebrating, with Corrado and Waldemiro in the top three, followed by Lorenzo, Roberto, Alessio, Nicola Mura, Antonio Terminelli, Alessandro being closely followed by Ivan. We will see whether Ivan is able to get past in the final corner. We may have another drag race. No, he's unable to get in front. This has been round 4 of the Speed Devils League at the Nurburgring. We will join you next week, where we will be at Brands Hatch in the United Kingdom. That is on the 18th of June, I believe. So till next time, from us in the commentary box, goodbye.